Colin Sherwin back with us. You, of course, know him from DK Nation, college sports editor. Colin, how are you, man?
Good to be here. It is day like 780 30 for me in Vegas right now, and I am gonna found out yesterday I'm heading to the Final Four next week as well. So the suitcase,
it's just tough to be you.
tough life, I tell you.
Go hang out in Vegas for weeks at a time, hanging out in the sports books. Kicking a couple back while you're watching all these games from the start of the day to the end of the day, and then have some nice meals on the company dime, and then when you're done, off to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm sure those receipts are. We might have some trouble getting those through the expense process for some of the things that we purchased out here dinner wise. But I think it's been a lot of fun, and there's nothing better than being in Vegas for the tournament. And actually, next year it's going to be even wilder because this round of the tournament, the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, will be in Las Vegas next year as well. So it's just going to be nuts out here next year.
Yeah,
so if you get the chance, come on by.
Stick around.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just hang out here for another 365 right here on the strip in the hotels. I'm sure they won't have a problem with that. No problem.
Just wait it out. Julian Edlow was there with you for a time. Ben Zwyman as well. I've seen you guys, all three, you posting pics of food as people do in the 2020s. And you know what? It does look like you're eating pretty well. So hats off to you, my friend.
As I sit here with my tiramisu from Italy, which was my jumbo sized because we got to use all the comps before they expire. So
awesome. I'll be having ramen for dinner after this show. So thank you for that. Let's talk about what we got going on tonight, because after an arduous waiting period, after such excitement over the first 4 days of the tournament, as you witnessed there in Vegas, obviously, and many of us watched from home, we had to wait a few days through all the upsets and pining over what would happen next. Obviously, we will consult with our friends at the DraftKings Sportsbook, see what the odds look like. But we got 4 games tonight as we begin the Sweet 16, the round of 16. And, I guess I'm most curious just looking at it. You only have one double-digit seed that's going to be involved tonight. You have Michigan, who, of course, has been in many ways shocking people through both rounds. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if Michigan went down right away, especially in the wake of how things wound up for Juwan Howard's program there toward the end of the regular season and into the tournament. But they are at it against Villanova. We also have top 5 seeds, Arkansas and Gonzaga, Texas Tech and Duke, Houston and Arizona. So a lot of, I would think, very close matchups that we have on the way, although Arkansas and Gonzaga, that is right around a 10-point spread, 9.5. The Bulldogs are favored on the DK Sportsbook. But let's start with Michigan and Villanova. Do you think this sort of Cinderella run can continue here for the Wolverines?
I think it's possible, and I am going to lean towards Villanova, not only to win, but to cover. This is just such a veteran Villanova team. So many games played in NCAA tournaments, so many big games played. And the thing that Michigan does well is something that Villanova does a nice job of taking away, which is playing through the post and Hunter Dickinson. I think they can get him off of his spot a little bit. I think they can do enough with ball pressure to keep those entry passes from coming in. And I think what Villanova does so well is they don't make mistakes. I mean, they play mistake-free college basketball. It's not very exciting. They're in the 300s in the country in pace. And, it's not like they're running up and down the floor and dunking on people, but they just play such efficient basketball. And they're the best free throw shooting team in a long time in college basketball, not just this season, but over an extended period. I think Colin Gillespie is one of the most reliable players in college basketball, especially from a betting perspective. Everyone seems to forget this guy played in the national championship game 5 years ago at Villanova and won a national championship as a freshman, and he's still on the team doing the same thing. So it's pretty incredible. So I'm going to take Villanova tonight, lay the 5. It's not a great spot, with the points, but on the money, I kind of like the money line at 220 actually a little bit better, because I just don't see how Michigan finds a way to get through here. So I'm taking Villanova, but I do think it's close because Villanova just tends to play teams close and then wear them down to the last 4 minutes and put them away.
Well, I guess what you're talking about sort of speaks to this as well, but looking at it, and people can see the odds on their screen if they're watching and not just listening, and the lowest point total tonight, albeit by only a point, but the lowest point total as of right now for the evening belongs to this game, just 136 between these two teams. That is a far cry from, say, the 155 between faster paced Gonzaga and Arkansas. So as far as this game, I mean, do you think it's going to be a slog? Do you think, as you just outlined it, Villanova is just going to kind of grind down Michigan and that'll be that? It'll be heavy defense in the second half?
Yeah, I don't even know about defense. I think it's just more like, okay, we're going to pound the ball until the shot clock gets down about 7 or 6, and then we're going to drive the lane, make a play, and take a shot. I think that's just sort of the kind of basketball that's going to get played on both sides. That's just what, Villanova doesn't chase offensive rebounds. They're not trying to clean you up on the glass, though they can. They're getting back on defense. They're setting themselves, and they're trying to get in position to make sure that you're unable to score. And I think they'll continue to do that as well. So, yeah, for me, it's the Cats, just, veteran team, consistency. And that's just what Jay Wright's teams have done for decades now. It's not the most exciting basketball, quite frankly, but it's effective winning basketball. And especially come tournament time against teams that have some flaws, such as Michigan. I think that this is probably the kind of team that just isn't going to make those kind of mistakes. With Michigan, you look at them, defensively, 77th in the country, according to Ken Pom. And that's just not what gets it done, in the Sweet 16 of tournaments. They just can't stop people. Part of that is Dickinson just not being a great defensive force. So, I have Villanova tonight. Spread, but definitely to go through and be in the Elite Eight.
Let's go game by game, just because obviously we have the time to do so. If anybody has any questions, you're watching along, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're finding us, don't hesitate. Colin here with you. And like I said, we've got you for at least or at most another half hour or so. So plenty of time to get your thoughts in. This Arkansas Gonzaga game is really interesting to me. One, in part because of that widespread, almost double figures, obviously. Also, the point total sitting at 155. That always interests me. It should interest anybody. But on top of that, I don't know. It's almost like when I look at this spread, we're discounting Arkansas one, but also maybe forgetting that Gonzaga almost lost here earlier in the tournament. I know that would have broken brackets left and right. Plenty of people obviously going with the chalk and picking Gonzaga to win this whole thing. The fact they almost went down in the first 2 rounds, noteworthy in and of itself, but it's like with a sort of few day hangover from that. We've forgotten all about it. And now we're just looking at the Bulldogs like they've been all year.
So, Julian and I were sitting in that sports book in Las Vegas, and when we saw Memphis, that second half, that is a Memphis team that I've watched closely this year. And they are so up and down. In their conference tournament, they had a 24-point lead, and 5 minutes later, they were up 3. They just do things that are just so wild and up and down. And to me, having Gonzaga trailing in the second half was a license to print money on the in-game line. Gonzaga is going to come back. They're going to make plays at the end. That's fine. But Arkansas is the type of team that's going to give them the most trouble because they're so athletic. They run at you. They press. They just attack downhill. They're not the most skilled basketball team, but they're athletic as can be. And they really disrupt whatever you're trying to do defensively. So I am out here on the island. This is me over here. I'm out here. I'm calling it. Arkansas beats Gonzaga tonight.
Wow.
And advances to the Elite Eight. Yeah. This is a nightmare matchup for Gonzaga. Chet Holmgren's going to really struggle with the athleticism on the block of Arkansas. I just think that this is the one spot. And believe me, I know I'm alone here. And I feel very alone sometimes when I talk about this. But when the brackets came out, I had Arkansas winning this game. And somehow they have put it together. I think Jalen Williams has a big night tonight for Arkansas. JD Notte is one of the, he's played, I don't know, about 500 career college games at this point, and he's just the kind of veteran guy who's going to be able to make plays. The thing with Gonzaga, and we saw this especially in the West Coast Conference tournament, if it's not their first 2 guys, if it's not Holmgren or Timmy, then they do have guys that they can go to, like Andrew Nembhard, who the transfer from Florida, who when he was at Florida, I watched him a lot and I was like, this kid's not very good. And then he gets to Gonzaga, becomes a part of that system. He is an extremely effective third option. But what most teams can do is take away your number 1 guy and your number 2 guy. And then the third guy and the fourth guy, if they make plays, they make plays. Arkansas can take away your third guy, your fourth guy, and your fifth guy. And that's just why I think, they're going to have to find a way to score points. And that's the biggest challenge with Arkansas, is always going to be scoring. But what they do defensively, the way that they generate turnovers, I just think it's the one type of matchup that can get through. So I love Arkansas first half. We've really seen Gonzaga struggle first half for basically the last, 3 weeks of the season. So my best bet is Arkansas first half +5. But as far as the game goes as whole, Yeah, I think Arkansas finds a way to get through tonight.
And you already acknowledged this, but so you foresaw this coming, meaning like obviously if Gonzaga in the first two rounds had won its two games by 30 points apiece, as opposed to obviously squeaking by, when the brackets came out, you foresaw this being a very difficult matchup and Arkansas actually taking this game. There's no sort of recency bias to what we saw earlier in the tournament for you.
So my bracket is just as much of a trash can as everybody else's is this year. That's totally fine. But this one game, yeah, I had both these teams getting to the Sweet 16 and I had Arkansas going through. I got Arizona winning it all. And I got some questions about that now, but I'm going to stick with this. I just think this is the type of matchup where Gonzaga is just going to struggle. And I love this Gonzaga team. I think if they win this, they are very much should be the favorite to win the national championship, even over Arizona. But this is their nightmare matchup. And I just, one of those things, it's not like Gonzaga's playing their best basketball right now either. And so I'm going to go with Eric Musselman to do what Eric Musselman has done at every stop along his career. And that's slay Giants. And so we're going with Big Silly, go Hogs.
All right. Well, that's slaying Giants, another team that you could view as a perennial program giant, if you will. Obviously, that's Duke, and the swan song for Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, going out after this year, retiring. And so it's sort of that win it for the Gipper thing they've got going on there for the Blue Devils right now this year. And I think to some degree, surprising some people. Like there were plenty of people that had Duke going down by now, not advancing to the Sweet 16. Texas Tech is the matchup. It's a pick 'em, one of the later games tonight. And after that last game in particular, where Duke won, there were a lot of people coming out. You saw it all over social media. It was like, man, like they're going to win it this year, aren't they? Like this is what's going to happen. Like Coach K's done. They're going to find a way, as up and down or whatever as they were during the year. This is going to be the year that all these people are, I'm not going to pick Duke. I pick Duke every year. I'm not picking Duke this year. Duke is finally going to get the job done. What are your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
So this Duke team, I think, is worse than they were in November. And I think they're getting worse. So that game they played against Gonzaga on a neutral floor, which I think was here in Las Vegas back in November, where Paolo Banchero looked like clearly the number one pick in the draft and somebody who was going to have a spectacular 15-year NBA career. Now he's sort of in their system a little bit more, and it seems like they've taken away a little bit of the dynamism of him. Mark Williams is just as steady as can be, and I think he's going to be a big factor in tonight's game, especially defensively. But the rest of this Duke team, there's not really like an explosive, like a second option where you go, oh, that's a guy who I can give the ball to late in the game, who can put it on the deck and get to the rim and score. And that I think is going to be a big problem for them tonight. The factors here is that, first of all, Texas Tech is the number one defensive team in the country. They play elite defense. They guard like nobody else does. And I think that can, just sort of disrupt teams, especially in a neutral floor. This is really interesting. It's a pick 'em. It's basically a pick 'em everywhere. The thing that makes me a little trepidatious, and I say this as somebody who had Michigan State plus 6.5 last weekend, it just feels like the refs are going to give a call late to Duke. They're not going to want to send Mike Krzyzewski home in an extremely close game. So I'm factoring the refs in here as at least a point in what I call like a pick'em, pure pick'em game on the numbers. So I'm going to stay away from this. I'm not betting this game either way. I like Texas Tech on paper. I think if the whistle is fair, I think Texas Tech finds a way to get through. But they also play very physically defensively. And so the refs are going to be a huge factor here. And since those refs are a factor, if they call everything, I like Duke. If they don't call a lot, I like Texas Tech. So this is an in-game bet for me for sure. But as it is right now, I'm just to stay away. And it's a coin flip. And I do think if it's close late and Banchero puts the ball on the floor and he drives the lane and they're not really sure if the ball got slapped or the arm got slapped, they're going to call it. And that's just how I think this game goes. I think it's that close.
I'm really interested in the last game of the night, Houston and Arizona here. Now, I'm high on Arizona like yourself, maybe not as much so. I mean, you've obviously, as you said, you've got Arizona winning the whole thing. I wasn't quite that bold, if you want to call it bold, in my bracket, because I just went super chalky and I picked Gonzaga. But 1.5 favorites, you got a pair of 30-win programs this year. I realized the level of competition wasn't the same as what other schools might see, but even still, you got two teams that have won 30 games this year. What are the expectations for this one tonight? Sort of, it's one of those, a giant has to fall in order to move on to the Elite Eight.
You know what's so interesting about this game is that KenPom actually has it the other way, and KenPom has Houston, who as the number 2 team in the country right now, and they have the Cats at number 3. So actually, if you go on KenPom right now, it's going to be 74-73 as the projected score for Houston, but the spread is 1.5 going the other way. To me, this comes down to Carissa and how well he plays, how uninjured he is. So yes, he came back. And he played in the last game for Arizona in that wild overtime finish against TCU, but he didn't play well. 27 minutes, 3 points, 1 of 10 from 3, 2 turnovers and an assist. If that's who he is at this point, after that brutal ankle injury we saw in the first round, I think Houston can definitely get through here and get back to the Final Four again this year as well. It's just how healthy is Arizona at this point, especially at point guard. They are the more dynamic team, and they can definitely score in more different ways than Houston can. Houston's problem is always going to be offense. Sometimes I think their numbers get a little bit inflated playing in what was a super duper weak American Athletic Conference this year, and especially losing a game to Memphis late in that league. They haven't been super tested yet, but I think they have an athleticism that can compete with anybody in the country, and their experience. A lot of these kids played in the Final Four last year. I think it's two or 3 of their starters were on last year's Final Four team. So I'm not sure. This one's, again, not a great spot. I have Arizona winning it all, but I thought Carissa was going to be healthier than this at this point, and I thought they'd be able to get through because of that. Without him, to me, this is a kind of a pick 'em. So if anything, I kind of like Houston with the 1.5 here. But if you ask me to pick who was going to win, I would probably take Arizona. It's that close. So yeah, the 1.5 makes a difference to me. So yeah, Houston plus 1.5 and Arizona to win. I know that sounds stupid, but that's how close I think this game really is. And so I will, that is going to be my pick here. But yeah, this is super duper close. And again, how the game gets called, I think really matters too. Houston's going to want less whistles and Arizona's going to want more whistles.
Well, and a couple of pretty prolific offenses, and you mentioned obviously some watered down competition, but in general, a couple of teams that score a whole lot of points. Houston has, at least of late, had the better defense. And again, you could attribute that to the level of competition versus the, teams that Arizona's out there facing on a nightly basis. But I don't know how much of an edge, if there's, any bit of an edge defensively, do you give Houston in this game because of that?
Houston's defense is just, when they lock in, they're truly elite. They're fun to watch too, because the way that they help is very like an NBA style, where like you'll see the help come from like weird angles. They don't just play like a traditional college style of defense. They play a much more advanced, that's Kelvin Sampson being in the league for a while. Mm-hmm. They play a much higher level. So they're a lot of fun to watch, but defense does tend to translate a little bit better in the tournament than offense does. But again, like this Arizona team, man, I never get his name right, but Azuolas Tubelis is one of the most fun players to watch in college basketball. He can shoot the 3. I think he's a stretch 4 in the league. And he can also just dunk on your head, like super duper athletic. Benedict Mathurin, I think we've all figured out is probably going to leave. He's going to be a one and done. What he did against TCU showed that, yeah, he's ready for the next level. He's going to need to put some weight on, but I think he's going to be a truly elite player. So you got 2 really, really super elite athletes for Arizona, and everybody else can knock down shots. And so, sometimes that's just enough to get through in the tournament. The margins here, especially for this day, I think for these 2 games in Texas Tech and Duke and Houston, Arizona, like the margin between victory and defeat is going to be 2 shots that rim out, 2 whistles. We're so within the realm, and that's what makes college basketball so fun. And what makes the tournament so fun. But if you're trying to pick games, it can make it a lot of a challenge. So I think the lines are pretty right on these. Again, this one's going to be tough, but I think Arizona finds a way to get through. But if you give me a 1.5, it's a 1.5 that's really going to matter in the last 30 seconds of this game. So
we spend so much time, Colin, obviously, whenever we do these shows talking about the tournament, we're fixated on lines and totals, spreads, all of it. We don't really ever talk player props. Is it something that you like to go after from a betting perspective with college hoops, or is it more of a stay away and you stick to more traditional lines?
So the difficulty is sometimes finding player props at places like DK during the season. If you some smaller games, it's just you don't get a ton of opportunities sometimes for player props. I think for this tournament, there's been a lot more of that. So during the season, player props isn't something that I get super into. But like if I was looking for players to really think that could be something, I love that JD Notae and Jalen Williams combined for 40 points or more. I think that is, especially at that price. I think these two guys can have a huge game tonight. Williams will be asked to do a lot more defensively, but Notae, I think, goes off this evening. So I think this is just the right kind of matchup for him. Holmgren and Timmy to combine for 35 and 20. That's a little tougher for me. I think Holmgren's going to have some foul trouble tonight. He tends to use his arms sometimes defensively instead of his feet, and that's a mistake that freshmen make. So I don't think he's going to be on the floor enough to see these guys get 35 and 20. So to me, that would be a fade, even though I don't see a no option on there. But I don't.
It's a don't make the bet.
It's a don't make the bet, right? So I don't think that's something that I would be behind. Although I think Timmy will be able to, he's going to get his, no matter who you're playing. That is just one of the smartest college basketball players in the country, who finds his teammates when he needs to. If he's doubled, he passes out of it. He's a very, very willing passer. And I think he will get doubled and attacked a lot. Arkansas likes to play a lot of people straight up, but I think that they'll actually hedge on Timmy because you kind of have to, or else he just turns around and shoots 15 footers over you, and it's demoralizing. And what's that one down there for 5th years of charm? Colin Gillespie.
So for Gillespie and Samuels combining for 35 and 10.
Wow, that's about 32 and 9 more than they did in the national championship game in 2018, I think, combined. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'd have to take a little bit of a deeper look at that. Rebounds for sure. I think they can definitely get there on rebounds. 35 is a lot of points for Villanova, for any two players on Villanova.
I want to know who's coming up with these names. 5th years of charm, the Monstars, Biggie Smalls on the next one for Hunter Dixon and Eli Brooks.
They're big and they're small, guy. I guess I kind of get it.
Yeah.
These are fun. I think I think there's a huge market in player props, honestly, in the college game, especially for Power 5 games in January and February. There's definitely opportunity there, especially for the better. Matchups are such a huge part of college basketball. If you watch enough of the sport, you can sort of go in knowing, okay, this is how this team's going to attack this team. This is how this team's going to, they're going to ball screen, they're going to ice ball screens this way. This team's going to pass out of it, this way. This team's going to press in these spots. They're going to press on makes, whatever. You can just sort of get some attention as to how teams attack each other. And I think sometimes that the players that are, or the bettors that are following these things a little more closely might have an edge on those setting the lines. So I love player props. I just don't get an opportunity to do them enough during the season, I think.
So neither one of us is going to be on the slate tomorrow, which means we should take advantage of what we've got tomorrow. That's 4 more games. And I don't imagine, you tell me if I'm wrong, Colin, but I don't think a whole heck of a lot's going to change as we talk right now between the tip off coming up tomorrow between these teams. Not like any of them are playing today, and short of an injury in a walkthrough or something like that, all the players are going to be available. So you've got it's a little more lopsided compared to what we have tonight. Pardon me. St. Peter's, everybody's darling right now against Purdue. It's a 12.5 point spread. The Boilermakers are favored. You have Providence, pretty big in my neck of the woods. Underdog 7.5 points against Kansas. Then a couple of closer games. Let's take a look at these here with about 15 minutes left in the show. And let's start with, I'm sorry, all the love in the world for Sister Jean and Loyola, but you are not the cat's meow this time around. It's the Peacocks, baby. Everybody's peacocking about picking them in their brackets if they did. The 2 people in the world that have done it nationally. St. Peter's, what are your expectations about Purdue, or against Purdue rather?
So Purdue has been, depending on how you look at it, either one of the unluckiest teams in America or one of the chokiest teams in America in second halves this year. That just sort of is how, I would say certainly they've had some bad luck, but I don't think they've also not played very well sometimes down the stretch. It seems like St. Peter's plays fearlessly. So 12.5, I honestly, I'm going to go by the numbers on this. I have to be honest, as the college basketball analyst for DK Nation, I was derelict in my duty during the season. I didn't watch a lot of St. Peter's regular season basketball, so I don't know a ton about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. I haven't seen much outside of the tournament, obviously. So on the numbers, this seems like, yeah, Purdue should like kind of win this going away. Purdue's one of the most efficient offenses in the country. I think they're top 3 in terms of efficiency. So yeah, shouldn't they just like walk away with this one? But should, right? But this is why the tournament's so fun.
But then again, you see that plus 650 and you go,
we haven't had a 15 in the Elite Eight before, and maybe now's the time. So, I like Purdue. I love Purdue in first halves. Purdue in first halves has been just a gift this season. They've been really, really good. When they tend to fall apart is in close and late games. They get foul trouble. And that's when they can really sort of get into a little bit of jail. I'm going to pull up a stat here on Purdue. Let me find it. It is, so they are the number 2 offense in the country right now in terms of efficiency. But I believe when Zach Edey's off the floor, that drops into like the 20s and the 30s. So yeah, they need to keep that kid on the floor. If he stays out there and St. Peter's is unable to get him in foul trouble, I probably like Purdue. But again, I'm not watching a ton. I can't lie. I'm not watching a ton of St. Peter's during the season. So congrats to Shaheen Holloway. He looks like to be the favorite to go back to his alma mater in Seton Hall here, which is a really cool story. For him to be the coach making, I believe it was $200 and some $1,000 a year, which is like what the director of basketball operations makes at Kentucky. And he is now in line to get a job at his alma mater right down the road. And I think that's just fantastic. But for me, I would play this as Purdue most likely. The Cinderellas tend to run out of gas right about now, especially the ones that don't have a ton of talent. So I'd be on Purdue if I had to be, but kind of fun little money line. You never know. Give yourself a sweat. And then definitely St. Peter's late, because we've just seen Purdue fall apart too many times.
St. Peter's getting any love on KenPom these days after the first couple of rounds?
I think they're in like the high ones or the low ones, excuse me. Let me find out. I want to say they're like 102 down to 102. For a team that was in the mid to high 100s, the 200s earlier this year to get down to 102, like that's pretty impressive. So at the start of the MEAC tournament, they were 128. And now they're down to 102. So I guess knocking off Kentucky and Murray State definitely wins you some computer points. That's for sure. And the thing St. Peter's does clearly is defend. It's how do they score? That's the problem.
So the other game with the wider spread I mentioned earlier, you got Ed Cooley's Friars taking on Kansas. Obviously, Jayhawks should win this game, 7.5 point favorites. There's really little doubt, except, you go back to the regular season when Providence was a, top 5 team in the country at points. And obviously, put on a pretty impressive performance in the tournament there before this tournament, going back to the conference tournament. What are the expectations here for this one?
So the one thing that I have led with Providence all year, and I stand by it because I watch them play and it just seems to hold up. They're still the luckiest team in college basketball by a lot. and that is not, my perceived luck as it is with Purdue. It is actual luck because they are on KenPom the luckiest team by a good distance this season. So yes, they are 27-5 and they find ways to win games, and they are guard heavy, which is something you want to be in tournaments. I think they are a tremendous story, but this is just a really tough matchup against a team that's much more athletic than them. Teams outside of the Big East this year have really struggled outside of the Big East. Kansas just has a level of athleticism with Ajabi and their guards that I just don't see how Providence matches up. I think they get bullied on the post in this game, and Ajabi just goes for huge numbers. I would 7.5's a lot. I probably would lay the 7.5 too. I like it more at 7. I like it even more at 6.5. But I like Kansas laying 7.5 here. I think this is just a going away. And again, a great story. Ed Cooley, coming to his alma mater and doing what he's done to get that program, where it should be. Like, they had never won in 40 years in the Big East. They had never won the regular season title in the Big East, and they finally get there. And I couldn't be happier for him. But, this is just a different level of basketball. Providence recruits locally, Kansas recruits nationally. And that's what becomes the difference in games like this.
Yeah, it's all that said, but rock chalk.
Rock chalk KU. Rock chalk KU.
Exactly. I mean, look, you got a 1 seed, and it's tough to obviously knock those off. Not that one or two go down every year. Obviously, at some point along the line, they can't all advance. North Carolina and UCLA. Interesting game, obviously. It's the closest margin that we have for tomorrow night anyway, just a 2-point spread between these teams. You got the Bruins favored to beat the Tar Heels. How's it going to go?
Speaking of teams that like to blow leads, North Carolina up 25 with 11 minutes to go, and then they pull it out in overtime. That was an officiating crisis. I think that showed how much we really need to start worrying. If guys like you and I are here because people are in the wagering community are involved in these games. And as long as the wagering community is an active part of March Madness, the officiating has to get better. And I think what we really saw in that North Carolina Baylor game is that collegiate officiating can really be a crisis. That game completely was decided by the refs. As soon as there was an ejection, I think the calls just started to lean so terribly in one direction over the other. And, it's really frustrating when you're a bettor to see a game like that. There were people who had, North Carolina second half bets that were probably just tearing their hair out. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. Although one of the officials from that game has advanced to the Sweet 16 this weekend, but I digress. I don't know how they put that guy through, but it did happen. UCLA, two truly elite scores, but right now about 1.5. Johnny Juzang just is not playing his best basketball. He's playing hurt. You can tell he's playing hurt right now. I was out here for the Pac-12 semifinals, the Pac-12 final, and you can tell he's just not playing like himself. This is not the kid who carried UCLA to the Final Four last year, like basically single-handedly. But Jaime Jaquez I always get his name wrong. It's just really hard to say when you're speaking fast. He has just stepped up and become sort of that like clear out. Okay, we need a basket. Give this guy the ball, score. UCLA plays maybe more boring basketball than anybody in the country. I hate that they win. I love their team. I love their players. I just hate the way they play. And I think that, this is a spot where North Carolina can be a lot athletic. I wouldn't be surprised to see North Carolina do a little bit of pressing in this game and trying to get turnovers and force some things. And I think they can definitely have some success on the post. Brady Maddock doesn't get ejected, which he shouldn't have been in the first place. But if he stays out on the floor, him and Bako are, one of the best 1-2 front court combinations in the country. So I think they can really give UCLA a tough time. Kind of like North Carolina here, not just against the spread, but I think they can win it. The problem with North Carolina is that we saw sometimes they have a tough time closing games, but if it gets close and late, I think RJ Davis is certainly capable of going shot for shot with a guy like Jaquez or Juzang or whomever UCLA puts out there. So we'll see what happens, but I will probably be on North Carolina here, especially getting to that. And let's also factor in about half a point of bias because I just hate the way UCLA plays. And I actually enjoy watching North Carolina. That has to be worth something.
The good news is we are going to have guaranteed at least one double-digit seed advance to the Elite Eight, because this last game that we have on Friday night, it's 11 seed Iowa State, 10 seed Miami. And I love it. I love the narrative. Obviously, I love that we're going to have it again, at least one double digit in the Elite Eight to represent, hopefully more than that. But no surprise, basically, that this is a close one, 2.5 point spread with Miami, Florida, of course, favored here in this one. What do we think?
I like the Canes. I think this Canes team is just peaking at the right time. And sometimes, like, even if you're not that good, if you think you are, that can be enough. It's so funny. I watched them play Dayton November 25th, and they lost by 16. And I think in the second half, they were down like 30 plus. And I went, oh, they're done. This is a team I don't need to watch anymore this year. They're terrible. And now I look at them and I go, wow, they can just sort of do everything. They play hard. They defend really well. They have some shot makers, which you really need in college basketball. And they've got a guy in Cameron McGusty who can make twos, probably one of the more efficient 2-point shooters in all of college basketball. So they got a guy who can score when you need to score late. And he's got some help and guys like Wardenberg who can shoot threes. And, if you kick it out to him, he's going to knock him down even as a big. So I like this team. I just think they're playing like out of their minds right now with a little bit of irrational confidence, if you will. So I kind of like the Canes here. Iowa State, obviously, super defensive. They're going to guard you. They're going to lock you up. Isaiah Brockington is a legitimate scoring threat as well. But for me, I'm sort of leaning Canes here. I don't think they can get to the Final Four. I think it'd be an amazing story. No, even the Rick Barry Miami teams never got this far. They never got past the Elite Eight. So that's kind of where things are in terms of historically with Miami. For them to be this good is a tremendous credit to the turnaround in the in-season coaching of Jim Larrañaga. Like this is something. I've had some friends around that program for a long time, and they speak glowingly about that guy, not just like on the court, but off the court and how he runs that program.
His dance moves in the locker room go a long way too.
It does not hurt for sure. And I'm very, very happy for the Hurricanes. And I think they can get one more, but I do think the Final Four is just kind of a bridge too far here.
So we're looking at futures right now to win the championship, and I don't think the order, the odds will surprise anyone, especially if you've been watching all the way through this show and the way that you've heard Colin talk about these teams. But that being said, despite the upset pick that he has with Arkansas beating Gonzaga tonight, Gonzaga is the favorite to win a national championship at plus 220. Then you have Kansas, Arizona, Purdue, Houston to round out the top five. Do you like a long shot here? I mean, I guess it would have to be Arkansas, right? If you believe that Arkansas is going to knock off Gonzaga, then that's going to vault the Razorbacks right into that conversation for you.
If Arkansas does find a way to get through, and I actually do have a ticket for Arkansas at 60-1. I think this Arkansas team can play with anybody. I think on any given night, they play harder. They're disruptive. They bring it. They have depth. They're well coached. They try and they believe in each other, and that there is something to be said for that college basketball. I don't know if that necessarily works in the NBA, but I think that really works in college basketball. So yeah, Arkansas of the value on the board, Arkansas is my favorite. I also think Villanova at 14-1. Like, when do you bet against Villanova? Like, at what point do you feel comfortable? What matchup left in this tournament where Villanova is playing do you go, oh, I feel pretty good about betting against Villanova? And you're getting 14-1 on a team like that. That seems, they got to win 4 games. That's tough, but that's a lot of value for a team that I don't see a team on that board where you go, oh, well, I'm fading Villanova here. I don't see it, So I like Villanova at 14. I like Arkansas at 60. Those would be my picks. I don't think Texas Tech. I like that number with Texas Tech. I just don't think they score enough. And if somehow you could get Houston at 900 after tonight, if they manage to get through Arizona, I would really like Arizona at 900 the rest of the way, but I think that number is just going to fall maybe to about 500 or 600, and then it gets a little chippier if they did find a way to get past Arizona tonight. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, Arkansas and Villanova are the two teams that I'm never betting against, and that matters in the tournament, especially in a futures board.
We're going to get out of here in a moment, but I do want to mention in the NBA, the pros, we've got a 5-game slate tonight. I know it won't necessarily be quite as compelling as what goes on the college hardwood, but nevertheless, 5-gamer tonight. And if you're playing DFS, folks, it's going to be interesting because I'm just looking at this right now. Giannis out. And obviously he was going to be heavily owned. He was going to be very popular tonight. Great matchup. He is not playing. John Morant not playing. So load up on Tyus Jones. No Chris Middleton, by the way, either for Milwaukee. So Drew Holiday, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen, all these guys are going to be super, super chalky tonight. There's no DeMar DeRozan for Chicago, but Zach LaVine is going to play. He's in a good spot. There's no Brandon Ingram still. Kyle Kuzma's out. Just looking at some of the guys that are, some of the bigger names that are unavailable tonight. And so in terms of ownership, again, Tyus Jones is going to be exceedingly popular. He could be in damn near 70% of lineups tonight. But you got Drew Holiday, Zach LaVine, Joker, Portis, Desmond Bane. All these guys could be 30+% owned, probably will be, based at least on the news that we have right now, still about an hour and a half away from lock. So pretty interesting. It's going to be an interesting slate tonight for sure, for those of you out there chasing some cash in the world of DFS. In terms of sports betting, for the most part, some closer games early, tighter games late in terms of how this shakes out on the slate. But Phoenix and Denver, especially Chris Paul, probable to return from his lengthy absence going back to the the NBA All-Star game. So this could be, I think that's the game of the night. That's going to be the fun one to watch. Phoenix and Denver a little bit later on. So at least we get it when everything else is kind of wrapping up. But we have to wrap up here because you got another Madden simulation coming your way in just a matter of moments on the DraftKings YouTube and Twitter pages. So make sure, or Twitch pages rather, make sure you check that out. 3 more games across the rest of this evening. The Sweat comes back at you tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. The Slate will be with you same time as this one, same time it is every day after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim, right around 5:15. Want to thank our technical director, Drew. Of course, Eamon, our producer, he's with us every day. And Colin, thank you for popping in here on a Thursday with Reed T. Fowler off doing his golf thing in Florida. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Adam. By the way, on this NBA, there's some trend where like Grizzlies first quarter, just pound it over first quarter. It's supposed to be like the best trend in sports. Go bet that.
And he wouldn't lie to you. Do it. Jump on it. I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll talk to you again. Enjoy the games tonight. College, pro, whatever you're watching. It's going to be fun. We'll see you later.